Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you this morning at NobleCon18, even if virtually. Trust me, you're enjoying better weather than I am right now. We are convening at a time when the world is literally changing around us. Major league uncertainty surrounds us about the economy as people wonder how well the administration and the Federal Reserve will tackle inflation. And what about the impact the rising cost of money will have on the activities of corporations and consumers? The war in Ukraine further complicates supply chain challenges, particularly with food costs here and the availability of food in poorer countries around the world. The course of the conflict itself poses what could well turn into ominous dangers for the world. But there are huge changes that should be profoundly positive. And you'll soon be discussing one of them, the Metaverse. As you can imagine, Forbes is no stranger to change. In our 105-year history, we've seen a lot of it. The rise of the internet, for example, shattered or shrank countless numbers of print publications. The transition to the new world was not easy, as there was no playbook on how to do it. But key was not forgetting our purpose in serving the needs of people in all aspects of commerce and finance, people who want to get ahead and those who have achieved success. You must look for opportunity, whether you're in calm times or in crisis. That's why Forbes is no stranger to innovation. I think it is part of our DNA, as Forbes has taken the lead in so many initiatives. The Forbes 400 list, our development of a vast, unrivaled editorial contributor platform that enormously expands our editorial content offerings and vastly increases our online presence, our technology stack, and technology that is coming now into the mainstream, including NFTs, crypto, and other Web3 elements. And the reason for Forbes' presence at this very conference is another milestone for this brand, going public. You can get the story from CEO Mike Federle and CFO Mike York during their session later today. But from where I sit, I see tremendous potential for the company with its combination of extraordinary brand recognition, growth plans, and a passionate and talented management team. Thank you.
Big tech, big brands, big ambitions.
And the metaverse is the next frontier.
It's called decentralized finance.
Blockchain,
cryptocurrency,
NFTs.
What is driving this Doge mania, and where does it go from here?
Listening, and that was a little bit over your head. Don't worry, because I'm right there with you.
I'm standing here in the Metaverse. It's essentially a bunch of virtual worlds where you can walk around as a digital avatar, talk to other people, play games, and buy and sell things. What the hell is this? Is it even real? And should we be doing anything about it? Well, it's already getting pretty serious. Right now, people are spending millions in real-life money to reserve digital plots of land, office space and apartments. And huge names like Zaha Hadid Architects and Manchester City Football Club are exploring the possibilities of design in the metaverse. Yes, really. It's a space where we're no longer restrained by things like, gravity, the principles of engineering, or securing enough money to go ahead with a building project. Is the metaverse really going to end up being a thing? What could we build without the limits of construction here on Earth? And how might that impact the way we create our physical world in the future?
Good morning and welcome to NobleCon18, Noble Capital Markets' first in-person conference since 2020. We think you'll agree that nothing beats face-to-face. We have an outstanding panel this morning to tackle a very complex and perplexing subject, the Metaverse. So let's get going. Please welcome your moderator, veteran journalist, Eric Bolling.
Good morning, everyone. Right, you can hear this? Yes, cool. Great to meet you. Great to be here. Thank you for having me. What a great conference. Real quick anecdote, Mike, the audio guy, no less, Mike's got it, said this is a fantastic conference, some of the most intriguing, interesting topics. When Chris Ruddy, my boss, said that you needed to moderate this panel on Metaverse, I loved it. I am completely involved in cryptocurrencies. I love what's going on with this whole new, wildly interesting growth area of the world of finance. So I'm really, really happy to be here. I also did a podcast with Brett Favre, the quarterback, who, if you know anything about NFTs, it seemed like these high-profile celebrities and athletes would be the perfect place for the NFT world. So that's a little bit of a background. So without further ado, let's bring in the wonderful, wonderful panel. We'll start first with, give me a second, here we go. Okay, he joined, he directly reported to the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, at Facebook and was the former head of Facebook's growth and monetization. He joined Facebook in 2012 as a part of a company's growth team, important. He rose to national attention over controversial topics, including whether Facebook used the microphones on smartphones to target ads, and a tweet in 2018 that questioned the findings of Robert Mueller's investigation, a comment that was retweeted by then President Donald Trump. Let's welcome Rob Goldman. As the CEO of Forbes Media Group, he's been attributed to expanding the Forbes media empire to 70 countries and developed brand extensions into education and financial services, a media visionary. Let's welcome Mike Federle. A technology entrepreneur and of more than 24 patents, he has a list of accomplishments, including the former CEO of Ultracast, a live 360-degree video and virtual reality platform company, and the former president of NetElement, an electronic payment platform. He currently is the CEO of Motorsport Games, a video game developer and publisher of iconic racing games such as NASCAR and Le Mans. Let's welcome Dimitry Kozko. And this man is one of the most influential men in media and politics. He's the majority owner of Newsmax, a fast-growing streaming and cable news network and multimedia company. Let's welcome CEO of Newsmax, Christopher Ruddy. Welcome, panelists. So, Mike, one of the people who put the Noble Conference together said, make this a very free-flowing panel. So I'll ask a couple of questions to the panelists. Please, panelists, weigh in anything you think. If I'm asking Dimitry something, Rob, feel free to answer, and Mike and Chris jump in at will, and we'll ask, if you have a question, let's do it this way. If you have a question that said something, give me a hand up, and I will ask, and maybe something needs clarity, because some of this stuff is new to a lot of us. So I'll start with Rob Goldman. And for some that may not understand what is meant by the metaverse, Rob, can you give us a layman's example, explanation of what the metaverse is, and tell us a little bit about virtual reality and augmented reality, if you don't mind.
Sure. I think, can you hear me? Everybody hear me? Yeah. I think you could think about the metaverse as, we already have some other place we sometimes go when we take out our devices, and you can kind of tell people in the room might not be fully present with you because there's something going on. Well, that thing is going to get a lot more immersive, and that thing can get more immersive in a couple of different directions. There's virtual reality, which we have now, you've probably seen or used yourself, and then you have augmented reality, which exists in the world now, but not really at any scale with consumers. The promise is that those things will become much more broadly adopted, and a lot of our time will be spent in that kind of virtual place or augmented place. And whether and when that will happen is still a big open question, with huge interests all over the map in the technology sort of world competing to see how and where that will start and go. And we can talk a lot about the different positions and whether or not and how that will become big and real.
Well, may I follow that up with, it's obvious that Facebook is very, very interested in, and you have a history of Facebook. Facebook realized that the metaverse was going to be a massive growth area opportunity for them. They changed their name to Meta.
Yeah.
What are they seeing? What did they see before anyone else?
Well, I think a lot of the big companies in tech see technology as somehow growing on and for people. Right? It's trying to fit seamlessly into your life to help you do the things that you want to do and accomplish the things you want to accomplish. And obviously, if it was 20 years ago, and I were to tell an audience that in the future you'll have this device in your pocket and you can take a photo or video and share that with everyone you've ever known immediately and get feedback from them, that would be hard to imagine. But but the technology is getting even more nuanced, even more subtle, even better, and it'll be able to fit into our lives in ways that are even more sort of seamless than just a phone. And that is, I think, what everyone felt. I think Meta, I think you have three big players here. You have Apple, you have Microsoft, and you have Meta, each approaching this from their own point of view with their own strengths and weaknesses. I think the Meta strength is the network. It's got the biggest and best, most dense network that the world's ever had. I think Microsoft's strength is technology and partnerships. I think if you look at, for example, the HoloLens partnership with the military, that's a good example of Microsoft using their special skills to do things no one else has been able to. And with Apple, you have hardware, but you also have design. And design is going to be one of the biggest questions, because one of the biggest things about this technology, right now I'm wearing glasses. I suppose 100 years ago that would have seemed strange, that you'd wear some glasses, like some piece of glass or 200, over your eyes and walk around like that all day. The notion that we would have glasses that might give us information about what's going on in the room may not be socially acceptable for people to wear, at least immediately. And I think Apple, if you had to bet on which of the three would be able to address that question best, it may be Apple with their design skills. So you have to sort of see which of those ends up pushing the metaverse technology furthest into the world. Is that the network? Is it the strength of technology and partnerships, or is it design?
So Dimitry, the gaming industry seemed to be at least ahead of the curve when it came to virtual reality, putting people, gamers, in scenes before what it looks like will be a much more broad industry going forward. What did the gaming industry, how did you start? How did they start? How did you start? What do you see? And tell us how we become part of this. I mean, there are people out here who want to know, do we buy games? Do we invest in gaming companies? Where's the growth and where's the future?
Well, definitely yes to both of those questions. You buy games, you invest in gaming companies. But, gaming has been a real easy to consume form of interactive media and experiences for many for a long time. And I think what it's allowing people to do is immerse themselves in some digital world and, more recently start interacting with each other, right? Similar to how Meta used to do a long time on the web, where it just connected the world. Now gaming is more than just about gaming, it's about just hanging out online. And I think that's what's starting to resonate with more and more consumers, and why Meta is starting to become more even understandable, because they're starting to correlate to the gaming world and saying, oh, wait a minute, yeah, I remember I'm going into Fortnite and I'm hanging out with my friends and we're accomplishing some mission together. And yes, with unfortunate events of pandemic, I was forced to be in front of my screen, and that's how I interacted with my work environment. I could maybe foresee that being combined one day, right? So maybe it's not just about an individual type of experience like games provide for a particular topic, but maybe one day it's this, digital environment where you just enter and you do your normal everyday things. So I think gaming has helped adoption and understanding of what it's like to immerse yourself in something interactive and participate with your friends and, do something of fun. And as this progresses and becomes more maybe mass market adoptable, then we could find different types of applications where, now sometimes I get invites for a meeting and it's inside a metaverse at some digital club. Like, okay, fine. If that's the new format, we'll go hang out over there and have a virtual drink.
So it's Zoom on steroids.
More immersive Zoom, right. The one that actually, whatever your reflection of yourself is in the metaverse will be fully exposed, not just the top part.
Got it. Chris Ruddy, CEO of a massively fast-growing media conglomerate. We do TV, we do other things. Chris, this is a whole new world here. This is something, we're traditional, we've been traditional media for a long time. There seems to be opportunity. What do you see as a potential, I guess, the next step for a media company to get involved in Metaverse?
Well, I think we're assessing it like everyone else. I think we're at the beginning stages of something that's just huge. I was at the beginning of the internet. Newsmax started in '98, so I was not an internet pioneer, I would say, or near pioneer. And I think there's been like an internet algorithm with new technologies emerging, advances in the internet, and it starts off with awareness and real interest. And suddenly there's a gold rush and huge amounts of money, capital, people, resources come in. And even the just effect of all these people rushing in pushes up the value, pushes up the prices, and pushes up stock values. And then there's a huge advancements in technological, and then there's a crash or a restabilization, and prices go down, everything sort of calms down. People say, well, what's really going on here? And then there's this aftermath period, the plateau, where people realize, wow, this really is big, this is important. And the investment that came in during the gold rush paid for the infrastructure that people can benefit from for a long, long time. The news business, I think, is going to see tremendous, we're one of the last to really implement, right? Other than NFTs, they've been Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated, others have been selling digital copies and photographs. AP has made millions of dollars investing in and selling NFTs of famous pictures like the soldiers on Iwo Jima. And those are all, I think, the beginning of this gold rush and this opportunity. I think in the news business, we're going to see a lot of virtual reality news. That's where this is going to go. You're going to have a correspondent. We have 4 correspondents right now in Ukraine, and they compact their stories. Sometimes they're live, but you see them sort of one-dimensionally on the screen. I'm assuming at some point we're going to have technology and equipment that'll have their whole body 360 degrees photographed and videoed and pulling in maybe even smell of what they're smelling. And they're going to be able to then transmit that into the metaverse, and viewers are going to be able to join that experience and actually see what's going on the battlefield with smoke and dust and bullets flying. And it seems like a crazy thing, but as folks have mentioned here, this is the beginning, and I think news will benefit dramatically, and it will become a real reality, not just a virtual, like where fantasy games are just virtual and an alternative reality. News is a real reality. And so I think we're excited about that potential at Newsmax, and we're exploring ways that we can be part of it.
Very exciting, as long as we don't replace our charming 4 o'clock hosts with virtual anchors.
He's irreplaceable.
Mike Federle, Forbes. Another area I'm very involved with, and I just love this topic, and maybe you can give us a sense of what, I don't know, we use that analogy, what inning of the baseball game are we in cryptocurrency? I think Forbes is very involved or very interested in expanding the crypto footprint. Tell us about how that plays.
Yeah, well, thanks. You know, it's interesting to just give you, kind of set the table a little bit. One of the great things, we were talking about this beforehand, of being in media like Forbes is we get to dip in and out of everyone's business around the world and kind of get an early glimpse of what's going on. And in the crypto world, we have become a real bridge between what I call the crypto committed. These are, you know, the millions of people, the 5 million people who follow CZ, who's the founder of Binance, and people like that. So these are the true believers. And then there's the crypto curious, who might be a lot of us in the audience here, who are still trying to figure it all out and might have invested a little bit of money in it and want to know if it's real or what the future is. And then there's the great and largest group, which is the crypto uninitiated. They just don't know, and they will know though. So we are in early innings still, but like any, you know, Chris mentioned the internet. It's really interesting if you look at the corollary between the adoption of the internet and open source programming that developed around it, and there are about 4 or 5 metrics, and it's on the same track. And so you're seeing these huge compounded annual growth rates of adoption of crypto and you know, everything else. Now, I put crypto, the metaverse, NFTs, all under that umbrella of Web3. We just 6 months ago, we were calling it digital assets, but Web3 seems to have taken over as a preferred term now. And to me, that, under Web3 is going to be all sorts of experimentation. And I love whenever anyone asks, what's the definition of meta? There are 100 definitions at the moment, but the one I like, which is somewhat cynical but maybe prophetic, is that it reduces every human interaction into a transaction. Now, it sounds terrible, but that is, and it comes out of the gaming world. It comes out of, and it's really interesting that this whole meta is really, it's going to be a generational thing coming out of the gaming world. And again, you can see all of the...
Let's explore that a little bit more. It's fascinating because the growth is phenomenal. Can you imagine if, the videos showed that people are already buying real estate in the metaverse, which I'm trying to figure out how you value real estate that could be unlimited, right? I mean, is there a limit? Do you I guess it's kind of along the lines of a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency. Well, it is technically limited. 26 million Bitcoins, I believe, will top out. How do you limit the amount of real estate in the metaverse, and why would you pay for it now? Anyone have an answer?
So I gave my team what I consider R&D money, and we bought land in Sandbox. I mentioned Animoca Brands, which is Animoca is the owner of Sandbox, and we're building that. And you think, so what's a natural transition for Forbes in the metaverse? It's everything we do. We communicate with people and try to inform them, make them successful in what they're trying to do. So taking that to the metaverse and having speakers and classes and our conferences, which we do in live and virtual already, translating that into the metaverse is one. Now they put us right next to Snoop Dogg, and they thought that was prime real estate. And Snoop Dogg is already having concerts where people are paying $1,000 a person to be in these private concerts at Snoop's crib.
So the value comes with your proximity to other desired brands.
A contact high.
Contact high. I'm just thinking for the boss here. Can you imagine if we got some programming into the metaverse? We want our Newsmax on Snoop Dogg's TV, so on the back of the screen while he's delivering a concert, they can see the Newsmax logo behind it. Rob, the concern, there are a lot of people who are writing articles about this come, 10, 20 years down the road, where we're literally sitting in our bedrooms and we're living our life in the digital world.
Yeah.
Possible?
Is it possible? I suppose. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to replace the physical world, and I think like a huge aspect of this technology, probably the most important aspect and the least clear, is the part that is where you're bringing technology into a physical place like this, where it's augmented reality. Again, and I think there are just huge debates about whether and how that will take off. And I think it's much more likely that you'll have some kind of very diffuse augmented reality than you'll have huge numbers of people sitting in their house with goggles on, in a virtual space all day in the future.
Dimitry, do you agree? Because I hear stories. I have friends whose kids will literally spend 24 hours in front of, or more, sometimes a couple of days with very little sleep and just playing games, dozing in and out of consciousness.
Sure, I think it's really, and I agree, and I also add that maybe there's a parallel that's created that's actually a ghost of one another. So just open up your imagination and imagine you're having, I don't want to say parallel life in the virtual world, but what if you have something digital that's equal to physical, right? I'll bring an example of a car, right? There's some folks that collect these extraordinary pieces of art in some cases that grow in value and all these things, but they don't get a chance to show it off and experience them and so on. What if the metaverse allow you to have a verified ownership of a digital version, a replica of that you could actually do more of that you couldn't do in the real world? So you take that very fancy, one-of-a-kind vehicle, and now when you're in the metaverse, it's somehow tagged for all of those viewers, all of that community to know that you actually have a real one, but you're enjoying your digital version. So it could really open up experiences beyond just sitting in, your bedroom with the VR glasses. It could, I think, draw some parallels that haven't been done before that could just enhance our experiences.
I would just add on that the value of some of the virtual stuff, and we see it in Bitcoin, is that there is a register, that there is some arbiter of what is true and what isn't, what's real, and even in the virtual world, right? So you have a number with your Bitcoin, there's a number assigned, there's a blockchain that keeps that sort of ledger. And the land, the virtual land that's selling, there'll be title companies probably doing meta title and property, and people will be able to sell their virtual real estate. Even like my home or some famous celebrity, Donald Trump will be able to sell Mar-a-Lago to people, or a piece of Mar-a-Lago. I'll give him that idea.
Is this just creating a duplicate value? So everything that we know of in the world, we're going to create the same, hundreds of trillions of dollars of value. Just think about that.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, Eric.
Another, just open the door up for phenomenal growth. Chris, my question to you before you added that was, sounds like great opportunities in so many ways. Entertainment, yeah, but investing. How can government screw it up?
Well, I think government's going to want to control, especially the financial transactions. Already, I think they're very much behind the eight ball in terms in their mind of controlling Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, right? So we know that they're figuring out and plotting ways of doing it. And then we see in terms of like the Chinese, they actually join the game and they want to create their own cryptocurrencies, right? So you're going to have that happen. I mean, land, government makes a lot of money on property taxes, on the dispositions of title and property ownership. So if you're doing virtual land, government can start saying, well, if you do these virtual transactions,
here's a virtual tax.
Right, and if somebody really owns...
Virtual tax, there you go. Do we have to pay real earthly dollars to pay for our virtual? Because that's what we're doing right now, right? We're investing real dollars in virtual assets.
Let's say, although I'm, some famous celebrity, I wanted a J-Lo, I'm going to take her house and virtually sell it. And she's going to say, well, wait a minute, I own the house. And then, okay, well, I'm just taking an image of the house. Well, I don't think you own a copyright of the image of your own home. So maybe the government's going to start saying, well, you actually, if somebody takes something that's personal property, I mean, this is probably like, I'm not even a lawyer, the emerging law on this is going to be immense over time.
It's Wild West. Mike, any thoughts on the U.S. government turning the dollar into a digital currency?
Yeah, to me, the biggest change happening in the world right now is this notion of decentralization of everything. It's not just finance. And, there's an antenna that's put up on the tallest building in New York that is about the decentralization of Wi-Fi and peer-to-peer networks kind of taking over AT&T and Verizon and everyone else. And you couple that with this notion of decentralization of finance. Think of two heavily regulated industries that, if successful, will be decentralized and unable to be regulated if you talk to the most ardent decentralizers. But then, you hear Microsoft, Apple, and Meta, and the capitalist system is about centralization and control and taking the commanding heights and being the share owner. So there's a real yin and yang going on among the people who are really trying to bring forward decentralized finance. And already you're seeing exchanges like FTX and Binance kind of emerging as the big power players. But if you listen to them talk, they talk kind of in the most, radical decentralization of finance, which should frighten governments, because not only in finance, but again, if you decentralize, even the whole decentralization of the internet and Web3 is about detaching the internet from servers. And again, in the most radical vision, it becomes a network of peer-to-peer computing, which would give you total privacy, but would also give you, very hard way to regulate anything that's unacceptable.
Interesting word used, privacy. Rob, how do we keep this? How do we keep our information, our digital information, our digital wallets secure?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation here, talking about it's early days on the one hand for things like Metaverse and crypto, and on the other hand, you've got giants kind of building this next version on top of technology empires that are let's just say, most, I'd say, politicians have an issue with the way the big tech platforms are handling things in one way or another, and there is a drive to regulate them, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And in fact, we're seeing laws all over the world beginning to regulate them. Europe, we had a privacy law in 2018. The United States certainly not leading there. So how do we think about not killing things by regulating them too soon in early innings, but providing people the privacy and security that they need to come inhabit these new places and grow them?
But we don't need government to help us secure it, though, do we?
Do we? I mean, I would say we do. I think the rules of the road that are being set, like I think there's three aspects of kind of privacy online, and I think we have in the United States regulated none, in Europe maybe one. So I think there's consent, simple, just you should be able to know what's being tracked about you and say yes or no. That's pretty direct. That's the GDPR regulation, or the heart of what it was trying to get at. But then there's access. Can I see what information you have about me? And then there's control. I don't want you to have it. And it's hard for me to see how, without some basic rules being set, anyone voluntarily moving in those directions, because it's so expensive.
You can't invest in your own gigs, your own deals. Can I just go down the panel and say, if you had $100,000 to put into something that you, in this space, where would it go? I'll start with Rob.
Oh, wow, I'm on the spot. I mean, I'm a very data-driven person, and I think a lot about measurement. And so for me, I think we're all talking about it, it's very early. And I don't think too many people really know what's going on or which way's up. So if I had some money to invest in the space, I would invest in measurement and analytics for the metaverse.
How?
Well, where are people going? How are they spending their time in the metaverse?
So the hardware, are you saying?
No, I'm talking about mostly data analysis.
Yeah, data
collection and data analysis. So the key, I mean, it's surprising, right? The things that end up working and the things that end up becoming hits. Look at Beat Saber. I don't think anyone would have guessed in advance that would have been the biggest sort of hit game in virtual reality. So knowing where people are going and how they're spending their time, that's the tea leaves to tell you what will be the hot neighborhood. Is it next door to Snoop Dogg, or is it next door to the Beat Saber arena?
Mike, where would your 100K go?
I put 100,000 into our partners Binance, only because I now know a lot about them and they have a vision.
Wait, did he just violate the rule? You can't.
Oh,
you can't invest in your own gigs.
Well, they haven't closed that deal yet.
Okay.
So we're ahead of that game, and the reason why is that they have a much larger vision than just an exchange. They're truly trying to, with Forbes, educate the whole market and try to elevate legitimacy and the and the future of crypto and decentralized finance. And I've spent some time at some of their conferences, and you see the commitment of the early adopters there, and this notion of the first 200 million. What happens when 1 billion people adopt it? The first 200 million all become zillionaires. So,
Dimitri, what's your 100K? Where's it going?
Maybe just to add variety to all these great advices that already spent 200. I would say, one thing that's quite important that nobody I have seen figured out just yet in a mass scale is how do you create a scalable content that people interact with and the content creators or that content economy is flourishing in such a way that people in the metaverse are really turning this into their permanent source of income. So if there is something out there, startups or somebody created a way where you could have a piece of that business once somebody figures out, I don't know if it's a metaverse talent management and everybody YouTube was able to provide a great platform for everybody and took a piece of all those content creators. If there's something like that could exist in, well, right now a whole bunch of metaverses, one day I believe will consolidate and there'll be maybe the one or the two or whichever. But if somebody could figure out how they squeeze themselves in between the content creators that will turn this into their permanent source of income and the platform that they're on, that could be a very lucrative investment. So I'd place a bunch of bets.
Chris?
Getting back to my analogy of the gold rush, the winners of the gold rush days were the owners of the general store and selling picks and tools and equipment, right? So I think that this is such an amorphous thing right now. Anything that involves the infrastructure of the metaverse should be fairly valuable. And you think of NFTs, the market now matches almost the fine art market, about $40 billion. Companies that, I don't know if, you could say you'd invest in an NFT, maybe it'd be valuable in 10 years, maybe it'll be worthless. But the company that was selling it on the exchange probably will always make money. So if you buy a company that creates the exchange, you're going to probably do well for a long, long period, because even 10 years from now, there might be a smaller value, but still need to be exchanged. So I think companies, again, that do the infrastructure of the internet and the metaverse are always powerful players, and usually not the casualties we saw when the internet developed. AOL, Yahoo, they didn't go out of business directly, but they certainly are not like what we thought they were going to be initially.
Interesting. The digital version, the NFT version of a Binance or Coinbase, the marketplace for product, not necessarily the product itself. Interesting. Dimitri, I got 100K and you put your 100K up. I want you to start that business because I want to be part of that business that takes the content providers, the creators and the providers and the distributors and broker those deals. I think that's fantastic.
A hard part there that I think is a big challenge right now in the metaverse, crypto, even acquiring an NFT. I'd play a game and I would ask how many of audience here actually obtain an NFT and own an NFT in their digital wallet right now. But it's a progressive group, but it's still a small percentage, right? And the reason for that is really obvious. The barrier to entry, right, or the user path, the user journey to getting that end result is ridiculous. So if you give me another 100 grand, right, I would invest in somebody who could simplify that path so it actually has a chance of getting to the mass market. Because I think the only way things become really adoptable by everybody, like the picture, right, like you mentioned on your phone, when it came to your phone and it was instant and it was quick and it was stupid proof, not calling anybody that, but when it was just intuitive, then it took traction. So I'd invest another 100 with your permission with somebody who could take that into the Amazon one-click buy approach of getting people participating in it.
No, I'm going to stay with my initial 100, you and I, 100 each, and we'll stay with that first one. I like that one better. And by the way, the NFT I can't remember. There are two big NFT brokers, right? Two marketplaces for NFTs. I can't remember the name of them.
OpenSea.
Yeah.
Coinbase probably, yeah. OpenSea, I would say, is the notable.
And you look at Coinbase. Coinbase went public, and it's a $40 billion company now. $40 billion. I mean, fantastic
Makes sense.
growth.
What Chris is saying, right? It's infrastructure.
We must have. You got to have questions, folks. So there must be some questions for the panel. If you give me a hand up, and I'll ask. Go ahead, sir.
I felt like I became more interested in the Metaverse when I went through the pandemic and I was using the different ways of communicating, like Zoom and GoToMeeting and so on. In my experience, Zoom was my favorite because of the friendliness of it, the user interface. There was a statement made by someone that Facebook started really making money when grandma went on Facebook and it became a multi-generational thing, not just Generation Z. So how does this become a multi-generational thing? I'm using the pandemic as an example of adoption.
Pandemic effect, and how does it expand to becoming, I guess, a multi-generational for all ages. I guess we'll go down the row. Anyone want to start?
I mean, I give you a few thoughts. I think it's not going to happen until the technology is much more affordable and much more accessible. The problem with virtual reality headsets is they're uncomfortable to wear for hours at a time, and you can't interact with your physical space very effectively with them on. So, but you could imagine a world, like I think one way to think about kind of this mass adoption is maybe think about like earbuds or AirPods. Like that's something where you can imagine another channel of information happening. They're socially acceptable. People wear them around. They wear them all the time. It's not a big deal. It's easy to understand how they work. They're cheap. They're affordable. Everyone, that's the kind of world we'll have with AR technology when we have mass adoption.
Rob, what happened to Google Glass? Why? It seemed like it was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a very cautionary tale that the whole industry is looking at right now. I think social acceptability is the #1 question. Will it be weird or rude to be in some kind of AR, VR space when you're in physical space?
Was it too early? I mean, you can almost see like Google Glass coming out now with the acceptance of augmented or virtual reality and go, okay, well, he's sitting there, but he's.
Yeah, I'm going to say, it was too early. It was, I mean, people called, people who came into a room with Google Glasses on glass holes.
Yeah. Anyone else on whether or not when grandma can start hanging out in the virtual world?
Well, I think Dimitry hit on it. It's got to be easy and simple. My 94-year-old mother, who I did put VR glasses on, got so dizzy I thought I had killed her. Because, it does have to be simple and easy to use. But, it's interesting. I remember in the late 90s doing business in Seoul, South Korea, and everyone would walk around the streets looking at their computers. They were so far ahead of us. That was, 5 or 6 or 8 years ahead of. Now we see everyone walking around looking and bumping into things. And the same thing happened with earbuds. You started to see these things dripping out of people's ears, and you're like, what the hell is that? And now it's, because they work so well and they're so easy, people use them. So I do think it's a matter of social acceptance. But the idea of going virtual to real world, no one's going to stop taking a walk in the woods because it re-energizes you and it does soothe your soul. And
Are you sure? I mean, are you sure there's not a 15?
I live in Maine.
You sure there's not?
I live there.
Are you sure there's not a 15-year-old who would? Dimitri, is there a 15-year-old who would rather take a walk in the virtual woods than the real woods?
It depends what's in that woods. If there's something, if it's something rewarding, if their friends are in those same woods, if it's their personalized experience, which provides, Maine is beautiful. Somebody might like purple trees with pink dots on them, and the virtual world could allow them that. personalized wood experience. So.
Now, Mike, I'm not saying your 94-year-old grandmother, if it were comfortable, may want to take the virtual walk because maybe she doesn't want to get out there. You know, maybe it's a little too daunting, perhaps.
Well, it's actually my mother, not
Oh,
my
sorry.
mother, but what was the question?
No, my question, your premise was that no one's going to stop taking the walk in the woods
Yeah.
because it's invigorating, but, you know, we're aging, we have both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, yeah.
Older people may not want to do the walk, younger people may say, I want purple trees instead of green trees.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my mother still does walk in the woods, so it's good. But it's I just think there's a certain humanness and human experience and humanity that it's not an either or, and that's kind of what the dystopian, view of the world that everyone keeps talking about. Are we going to be in this virtual world and never connect with one another in other ways? Right now it's funny. Like every new technology, there seems to be the first iteration of it. And if you go into the metaverse, it's all dance parties.
Sure. So can I touch on the elephant in the room here?
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who say, I can't meet a boy or I can't meet a girl, but in the virtual world, my partner is amazing. He or she's gorgeous, beautiful, and just can't keep their hands off me. It's a big growth area too, is it not? But how is it, I don't know, how do you regulate it? I read somewhere where in a virtual meeting, there was an assault. Rob, was it a Facebook meeting?
I don't know.
Yeah, there was an assault. A virtual avatar touched someone else inappropriately.
Another avatar.
How do we? This is where it gets a little gray for me. Anyone have any comment on that? Anyone want to touch this one?
Did anyone verify that story, though? I mean, that sounds to me one of those apocryphal stories of dystopia and future problems.
So since you jumped in, let me ask you this: if it did happen, is it a violation? Anyone? Tough one, right? All right, we'll move on.
I guess that violation will depend on the person who got violated, how they feel about it.
Yeah,
right? It's their personal opinion.
There you go. I'm sorry, ma'am, you have a question. So,
because they are not regulated, because they are how you cannot do something like at the dollar and you can be taxable the cryptos, or they cannot be.
yeah. So if I may paraphrase, how real? Because it's not tangible. How real is this whole metaverse world? And Chris, maybe you can weigh in on this, especially because of news is real, but you can't touch it.
Well, think about sports, right? When sports started, you'd say it's an alternative universe, it's an alternative reality, right? Who would think that it would become such a huge part of American life? It's people playing games, whole teams, whole societies divide over basketball, football, right? So it's become real, even though sports are not really about anything real.
Yeah. Dimitry, it's blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Virtual football with strategy. Wow. I mean, I watch football nonstop. Now I'm thinking, how do you you'll have, I guess the best programmers are going to be best sports teams in the virtual world.
Well, you do see gamers are somewhere there. There's professional gamers that are making crazy careers around it already, right? Esports is really a thing. If I may return to the last question, because I think I'd like to add one thing to what you guys have said. And I think what could help adoption is a little bit of FOMO, a little bit of fear of missing out, and sort of a force based on surroundings. So we talked about how you gentlemen adopted Zoom because you were kind of forced to, right? And there were some things around the world. So I think that, plus, maybe to a grandma, there is some piece of content, some piece of show, some piece of something that they relate to, and they want to continue to consume that. And if that goes exclusively to a metaverse, right, or a different destination than they're used to, I think that could help. But it cannot be without ease of use, otherwise it'll just, make her upset.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. So the two questions, if you didn't hear, the first one was, we've heard about the virtual world and the real world. Is there a hybrid, or where is the hybrid? And the other question was regarding ESG. Anyone want to take that one?
I can speak to the first one a little. I think a lot of people are imagining that this sort of AR version of the metaverse is this hybrid, physical, virtual thing. And there's a big debate about what that looks like, and I'll just maybe show you a couple of different points of view on it that I think are interesting. One is that you'll bring sort of virtual things into the physical world in a new way, in a way that we've never seen before. You'll look at the moon, and instead of seeing the moon, there'll be a face on the moon that you see through your glasses that's not really on the moon, but every time you look there, it's there. So the physical world is locked to some virtual thing that is painted on it that gives it something extra. There's a whole different school of thought that says you don't need any of that, that people would be glad to adopt this kind of hybrid, in between virtual and physical in the form of a pair of glasses for nothing other than what they already have on their phones, just a little easier. Like, you can already Google something, but if you could do that without having to take your phone out, that would be better. And so there's one school of thought that says you need this really cool new thing that we've never seen before. There's another school of thought that says not at all. You just need to make everything we already do just a little easier. That's good enough. But those are both hybrid. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of steps between where we are now and this sort of full, everyone's got glasses and AirBuds and everything's going, kind of fully hybrid. One version of that is you could go to a place that has this sort of experience in it with projectors. You can go to either entertainment, or you can even imagine dining experiences or something like that you could visit for an hour and sort of get a taste of what the future might be like. And that may be the sort of thing you see first. And then maybe if some of those work, then the technology will follow down that path.
Sir, in the back. So the question was, the gentleman's concerned about the dollar, or what the ramifications of geopolitics and digital currencies are on the dollar. The world currency, we know everyone trades in the dollar, everyone needs the dollar. You buy oil in Saudi Arabia, you sell it in Saudi Arabia, buy it in China, you have to use the US dollar to do it. So, Chris, what do you think? Are we seeing the beginning stages of the dollar not being the global currency?
I'm not so sure it takes away from the dollar. In fact, the value of Bitcoin is that you can translate it back into dollars. So if you didn't have dollars, unless it becomes so accepted, but it would, I think, require governments all over the world to accept it as currency and individuals all over the world. So I think, it would have to become an all-encompassing reality or not. And if it isn't, then the dollar still is going to be supreme or another currency that people can translate those into. And in terms of, I can tell you this, Bitcoin, it's been largely viewed that Bitcoin has hurt the price of gold, and that gold, a lot of people in the gold market believe it should be about 20% higher than where it is, because the people that would invest in gold as a safe haven, as an alternative currency, are now doing these cryptocurrencies.
Mike Federle, Forbes, crypto. I've been a crypto investor since 2016, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, Era, some others. Up until about maybe 6 months ago, maybe a little more months ago, cryptocurrency seemed to be, as Chris points out, it was the alternate investment to the equity markets. Equities would go down, crypto would be strong, equities would go up, crypto may. Now, over the last 6 months, 8 months, if you watch the major cryptos, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some of the other bigger market cap cryptos, they're moving in tandem with the equity markets. What changed? What happened? And is there a way to capitalize on it?
Yeah, and I think the inflection point, as simple as it sounds, was the Super Bowl. And you go back to the 1984 Super Bowl when Apple did its famous commercial of the woman throwing the hammer into IBM and saying, hey, it's a whole new world, and the PC is going to take over. And it was the entry to the PC world, and that announced it to the world. This year's Super Bowl, you had Coinbase, you had blockchain.com, you had, there were four, I think.
Tom Brady.
What's that?
Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, they were all there, crypto.com, exactly. And they're buying up signage on stadiums and everything else. So coming out of the Super Bowl, it was like, hey, wake up, people. This is the beginning of a new era. And as a matter of fact, a week later, there's a news program, and a little bit to your question here, there's a news program called On the Media. And On the Media had this piece about, oh my God, the media has been caught flat-footed, not covering crypto well enough, that now 1 billion people on the Super Bowl have seen all these commercials that make absolutely no sense to them. And there was one, I think it was crypto.com, or it was Coinbase, that had the floating QR code.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of people, like, what am I supposed to do? But it took the people in the know right away. Yeah. They took it and they got a discounted Bitcoin. And, this is the beginning of the adoption that we're talking about, that it's a slow adoption. But I think that was the inflection point.
So crypto went from an alternative investment to a mainstream investment.
It's moving into the mainstream. I don't know if you call it mainstream yet, but it's moving into the mainstream.
It feels main.
Yeah, it does feel main.
Anyone else on the dollar? No? Any questions here?
I don't want to rain for rain, okay?
What's that?
I don't want to rain for rain.
Rain on the parade, yeah.
I just want to repeat what I have been hearing. Because I'm learning. I come here to learn.
Sure.
What these other investors, billionaires, because they were investors, billionaires, on the panel, they were saying like it's so volatile and it's so.
It's volatile. Well, may I take it? Just, I think what's happening is it had been extremely volatile. The cryptocurrencies, just wild volatility all over the place. That's calmed down. It's calmed down quite a bit. They're giving me a couple of minute warning here. Questions? Let's get a couple of questions. Yes, sir. Anybody? I don't think you can invest in it, right? It's probably still private, yeah? As Coinbase was until they went IPO. Now, do you want to buy an IPO do I?
If you want to invest in them, contact them and ask them if they're doing a private round, and you'd be surprised. They add you to their list. They might make you part of it.
Here's how confident I am in crypto. He pays me. Pay me in crypto, and I'll take it. I'll take it over the dollar payment. Does that answer your question? I will take crypto versus it. Let me get you, sir.
That's answer your question.
I know. I have to get to other people. Yes. Oh, will they have control? Are you saying?
Good question.
Let me know if I'm asking this question properly. The Metaverse providers, distributors, will they have the similar control that a Facebook and Twitter has over the content? Is that right? Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think they already do. Right? Every platform you look at has community standards that you need to abide by if you want to be on the platform, and they enforce them.
Now, Chris,
Any private company that controls it is going to try to have some controls over the content, even if they say they don't and they claim they're an open platform. I think it's just human nature. They're going to start trying to exert control or influence.
Did I answer?
The community standards are going to require that nothing indecent and nothing illegal, and there's going to be a lot of test cases and more legal cases on this reality. And then in future, you might have governments that want to restrict more, and then sometimes we'll have periods where they might be more liberal on the view about what can go up.
Along the lines of what Chris just said, community standards, who decides what this community standards are? Can I put a casino? Can I put a casino in the space that Forbes rented? Or bought?
If I may comment, so most of the time that these platforms are created, they are written by coders, right? They're building set of tools that then giving those tools to the community to create something. If the tool doesn't exist or wasn't created that allows them to do something, like maybe build a casino, right? Maybe there's some restriction, there's not enough building blocks, or there's no casino machine of any kind. That could be one way that the creators do have initial control. But they sure will try to make you feel, as you're part of the community, that it's a free world. You could do anything. Like, here's a set of tools, go build whatever you want, but then sometimes you'll hit that creative limit once you recognize there's no shuffle and you need to dig a hole.
Anyone else on this one? I just changed my mind. I want Dimitry and I to invest in casinos in the virtual world.
Can we get a piece of transaction?
That's the only way we would do it. We'll be the house. Questions? Yes, sir? Are there health implications of spending more time virtually versus... Are there physical tolls?
I think so.
Go ahead.
I think so. I mean, you're just comparing, it's like going outside in the real woods, right? Enjoying all the other dimensions, the smell, the atmosphere, the, temperature and so on, versus sitting on your chair, most likely. I don't know, I'm just saying. Right? So I think with time, that could take a toll, right? You're less active, you're less physical, you're less mobile, blah, blah, blah. But maybe the hybrid, as other gentleman's question was, maybe it's the way that we blend into that over time and our bodies maybe adopt, and maybe then it doesn't take such a heavy toll. But I think if we jump from one dimension to another and all we do is sit in a chair with the VR glasses that already make a lot of people sick, we're going to get sick really quickly.
I say a few things on that one. I guess the first is, it's weird and surprising what works. Like, I don't think anyone, certainly I know no one at Meta thought that the biggest hit on the VR platform would be dancing, physical dancing, where there's a lot of motion and movement. So much so that people share those videos of themselves, like slicing beets as like something that's very personally about their movement, like about the way they move their body. So to answer your question, I think there's certainly going to be some effects. I don't know what they are. I think it's hard to predict what they'll be. And this is not our first time with this channel, right? We just had TV for 50 years affect the way we interact with the world. And a lot of people watch a lot of TV. I'm sure it had its health effects as well. So where it goes, I think it will definitely have effects on us, on the way we view and hear, our senses, and I'm sure on our physical bodies. But I think it's hard sitting with just a couple million people using these technologies every day right now to know what it'll be like when it's everywhere.
Okay, guys, I got a couple of minute warning, so if we can go down the line, any final thoughts? Anyone have any final thoughts that we didn't cover yet? Chris, your final summary.
Well, I think we all agree this is going to be huge. We just don't know what direction it's going to take off, how it's going to implement itself, what devices are going to be the winners, what companies are going to be the winners. But it'll become more clear probably a year from now. But right now, I just think we're sitting on the precipice.
Yeah, I think 2 years from now, it will be a lot more clear. A year from now, you'll probably have glasses from a couple of companies, and we'll be able to see what those are like, what those seem like. And you already have AR technology in the world with the HoloLens. It's just $3,000. So the prices there will come down. And those two things happening over the next 2 years, I think, are probably your best indications of where this is going. So watch for those.
That's good. Mike?
Yeah, I would say remain really optimistic. I mean, this is incredible what's happening. That we're really on the beginning of some major changes. Just like the introduction of the car or the television, there will be social ramifications of it, but it's part of the beauty of innovation and continuing innovation. So I'd say remain very optimistic and not all the dystopian sort of scenarios that are very easy to conjure up.
Dimitry?
I'd say pay attention to the gaming space more. Of course, obviously I have a biased opinion about that, but that is the place where more brands are trying to instill themselves. That's the place where big, let's say, anchor tenants are trying to figure out how do they interact with the viewers, what's that next level of interaction. That's the space where creators, content creators, and creator economies are being developed. Those, I think, are the necessary building blocks that could actually dictate how fast the metaverse reaches the mass market or not. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of the, large gaming companies that actually flips and says, hey, we are that, and we'll adopt, some peripherals from another company and this from another one, but they might become the core. Look what Unreal is doing right in their engine. It's almost a photorealistic 3D environment that's an essential block to building a metaverse.
So they got the head start. All right, guys, that's Rob Goldman, that's Mike Federle, Dimitry Kozko, and Chris Ruddy. Give them a round of applause. Great panel, folks.
Yeah,
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you, Chris. Pleasure.
Chris.